A message I wish I told myself was to be kinder and more patient. I think there's so many opportunities that get thrown at you now that you want everything straight away. We talk about like delayed gratification. So I think like giving themselves time, stay motivated, stay disciplined, and like be really open-minded to change.
Hello everyone, welcome to In the Corner, the place where every cricketer wants to be. I'm your host Callum Dunk, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Please ensure that you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media platforms for more updates about the cricket that's going on around the world, as well as our latest episodes on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Today's guest is our first women's cricketer on In the Corner. She plays for the Brisbane Heat as well as the Queensland Fire. Nicola Hancock, welcome to In the Corner. How are you?
I'm good. How are you going?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm very excited about our chat today. As I said, you're our first female cricketer on the podcast, so very interested to hear your perspective on the game and how the men's and the women's game is similar, but also compares as well. I'm really interested to hear about your cricketing journey. How did you get involved with the game, and how did you progress through the pathways to inevitably play for multiple BBL teams and obviously the Queensland Fire as well?
I wouldn't say my story is excessively exciting. I was the classic younger sibling. I wanted my older brother to be my best friend. He was playing out the backyard or down at the local nets with my dad most nights. And my dad always had some new contraption to collect the balls or throw them down faster. And that contraption ended up being me. So I would go down and collect all the balls. Then I started to progress into bowling to my brother Jake, which ended up me bowling for hours and hours on end. And I'd bowl to him and I'd try to get one wicket and it would take hours. And he'd be like, Nicola, you can get out 10 times and then I'm batting again. Sure enough, 11 balls later, because he can't go out the first ball, he was batting again. So Jake got the bowler he always wanted and I didn't get my best friend.
Well, there's a lot of good things about having a brother and sister rivalry, and I certainly share that with my sister here in Adelaide. But Nicola, growing up, did you have a particular men's or women's cricketer that you aspired and looked up to?
When I was younger, I wasn't too aware of too many female players, but I really enjoyed watching Brett Lee bowl. But eventually when I started playing club cricket, I played with a former Australian player called Clear Smith, and she was a pace bowler, and she supported me through a younger part of my career, and I looked up to her, and I eventually started working with Catherine Fitzpatrick, who would be one of Australian women's most fierce fast bowlers in history. But currently I really look up to Michael Nessa and just how he's going about his career at the moment. So I think through different stages of my life, I've looked up to different bowlers.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Michael Nessa. I had Chad Sayers on the podcast a few months ago, and we were talking about how it was initially outrageous that he was left out of the test squad, and obviously extremely unlucky not to play any of the test matches in England after he was brought into that squad. But Nicola, how do you find the schedule in women's cricket? We've talked about with some of our other guests on the podcast that there is so much cricket going on these days, particularly in the men's competition. We see the 100 that's going on at the moment. We see the WBBL. We're seeing the women's IPL as well that's going on, and there's more opportunities for female cricketers. How do you go balancing your schedule, and I suppose how do you go about selecting the tournaments that you're going to play in?
I haven't been fortunate enough to play in any international comps, so I've been fortunate enough to focus on areas I want to improve in my game. But playing alongside some international players, it does take a big toll on them. I think they manage themselves incredibly well, but it's a heavy privilege to carry, traveling around the world, but being away from your family and friends for significant periods of time. And I do believe they manage it very well. But personally, I'm fortunate enough to be able to just focus on evolving, and hopefully those opportunities will come for me in the future.
Just following on from that, what does your summer schedule look like in terms of preseason training? We know that the WBBL is coming up in October. What does your summer schedule actually look like for the next, 6 to 9 months?
Well, we just finished our preseason day today, so 12-week preseason. So we've been training since May. Everybody has been crawling to the finishing line. Once we have a week off next week. So it's been 12 weeks, week off next week, and then we move into a new competition that Queensland Premier Cricket are running with the KFC T20 Max. So we'll be playing, I believe, 6 games over about 12 days. And then we have about 3 weeks until our first WNCL match, sort of mid-September, play 4 games of one-day cricket. Then we move into mid-October for 14 games of the Big Bash. And then we'll finish the remaining season of WNCL from December and through to March.
Wow, that still sounds like it's pretty full on. And it's great that the women's competition is still playing the 14 games of BBL. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the men's competition just dragging for a little bit too long, but I think it's great that the women are still able to play those extra games, because I feel like the competition's just going to accrue more fans in the women's game, and we ideally want the women's game to grow. And we're seeing with the World Cup at the moment what it's doing for, the Matildas and getting young girls involved in sport. Just touching on from, inspiring young girls, if you had any advice at the moment for a young girl who is wanting to get involved in cricket and potentially go down a pathway, what's some key bits of advice that you'd recommend?
A message I wish I told myself was to be kinder and more patient. I think there's so many opportunities that get thrown at you now that you want everything straight away. We talk about like delayed gratification. So I think like giving themselves time, stay motivated, stay disciplined, and like be really open-minded to change, because somebody could say something one day in your career and it could change it. So I think the big thing for me was stay patient and be kind to yourself, because it is a really difficult sport to continue after a few big sort of upsets, I guess. You get more down days than up days.
Absolutely. And having played cricket, just even at a grade level in Adelaide, I experienced a lot of ups and downs, frustrations with selection, and all of these things can just take a big toll on a cricketer and really affect the way that you feel about the game. And, cricket is one of those games where the highest of highs is truly amazing, but the lowest of lows is just almost unbearable at times. So resilience is something that is so critical to a cricketer. And as we talked about with a few other guests, the mental side of the game is just becoming more and more important as we learn more about the mind. Nicola, I just wanted to get your thoughts about where you think women's cricket can go and how much can it grow, let's say, in the next 15 to 20 years. Ideally, what would you like women's cricket to look like as a professional athlete?
I think Australian cricket at the moment is a bit further ahead from a domestic level than most other countries. So I sit in a really fortunate position to be a full-time athlete now. I would love to see the women's game play more longer form cricket, so red ball cricket. It's something that the girls have pushed for a long time. And from everybody they've played with, everyone just wants to play more cricket. So a longer form, probably a side-by-side sort of test series with the men. I think most of the competitions now internationally are starting a female competition. Everyone wants to keep up. The appetite for female sport at the moment is high. So I would like to see most countries support their top-class female players into being full-time professional athletes, because I think like the standard is only going to get better from allowing people to focus on being the best athlete physically, mentally as possible, I guess.
Yeah, we've talked with a few other guests that we've had on the podcast about, getting some more money into those, smaller nations so that they can continue to, invest in grassroots cricket and obviously build more talent. And as you said, Australia is certainly ahead of the curve with England and India, obviously your big three in the scheme of things. But yeah, I certainly agree with you. I think there needs to be a lot more test matches in women's cricket. I think, the last couple of Ashes test matches, between Australia and England have been really great games of cricket to watch. They've been exciting. They've gone to the last day. The other recommendation that I would love to give to the ICC, not that they're listening or anything, but certainly want test matches to be 5 days for female cricket. If we want to try and give, I suppose, equal opportunity, I think that's a logical change, and we would have seen a few more results in women's cricket, I think, in test matches, obviously, if they had that extra day. So particularly in places like England, where it tends to rain a lot, unfortunately. Looking for the ultimate teamwear solutions for your sports club? Look no further than Macron Adelaide. Their extensive range includes a wide variety of jerseys for various sports, including soccer, AFL, volleyball, baseball, basketball, hockey, athletics, netball, rugby, and cricket, of course. Whether you opt for a custom design or choose something from their catalogue, you can trust the quality in their products. At Macron Adelaide, they pride themselves on providing top-notch teamwear solutions for clubs of all kinds. Visit them today and find out why they're the go-to brand for sports teams around the country and around the world. Macron Adelaide, for clubs that mean business. Nicola, I just wanted to touch on your experiences playing in the WBBL. You're currently playing for the Brisbane Heat. How much does playing for the Heat mean to you? And your journey in the BBL has been very interesting because you've played for 4 of the franchises.
I love playing for the Brisbane Heat. I think the environment that I am really allows me to play the best form of cricket for me. I always feel like I'm constantly learning. I really feel valued and backed in this environment. I think playing in other environments, I haven't not felt like that's not the case. It's just I played for an organisation for state cricket who didn't have an aligned Big Bash team. So I did have to look externally on who to play with. And I had some great opportunities in a number of states working with a number of different coaches and players and athletes in general. So I wouldn't change my journey through Big Bash, but I really feel like I've got a home at the Brisbane Heat now. I think I'm playing my 4th season here now.
That's fantastic. And we chatted to a fellow Brisbane Heat player in Josh Brown, and it was great to hear about his experience coming from grade cricket into, the club and the franchise and being able to kickstart his career straight away, which is fantastic. Nicola, I also wanted to touch on cricket's such a team game. The team dynamic is so important. What does it mean to you when you have success with your teammates? And more importantly, how do you celebrate your success when it does come around?
I think we talk about creating like a supportive and healthy environment to allow players to be the best versions of themselves. Like I'm willing to fail together. Like we always have to go 2 steps back to go forward. And I guess it creates an environment where all players feel valued and backed, which is breaking up the clouds of doubt in your mind before you walk out in the field. Celebrating each other's successes, it's so crucial to a tight-knit team. You watch people work so hard through pre-season on developing themselves on and off the field, and it's really empowering to see them put those skills into place into games.
As we've talked about with other guests, success is just such an important part of cricket. And as you mentioned earlier on the show today, you're going to have the down days, but it's important that when you do have those good moments that you celebrate it, you get around your teammates, someone scores 100 or someone takes a ripping catch, someone gets a run out that changes the course of the game. It's really important to highlight those moments. Nicola, the mental side of the game in cricket, is so critical, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but what are some of your practices that you put into place in order to get the most out of yourself on the field? If you're in a down patch, what sort of things do you do to get yourself back in focus and ready to play?
I've spoken to myself really poorly times through my career, especially at the start, putting way too much pressure on myself that wasn't actually there. I think you are constantly filtering that through your career. And currently I'm working a lot on like techniques to handle in these situations, I guess. I'm pretty aware that now, I wouldn't say at the start of my career, that not everything goes your way. And I guess putting these techniques into play consistently through training is going to give myself the best opportunity to perform in the games. I think keeping it in a really simple term for me this season is before I get to the top of my mark, I just want to tell myself what ball I'm bowling and really tunnel vision that, because if I've got other things floating in my mind, bowling happens so quickly and it moves at such a fast pace that if you're thinking more than one thing at a certain time, you're most likely distracted. So for me, it's keeping just what ball am I bowling now? What ball am I bowling now? And that's a really key thing for me this season, especially playing in the Big Bash in a lot of like high pressure situations, bowling at the back end or bowling in the power surge. So I think that's something that I've been really implementing into this preseason.
It's really fascinating to hear that, and everyone that we've asked that question to has said something completely different. Nicola, one thing that I did want to touch on is cricket can be a game of habit. And we've talked to our other guests about pre-game routines, superstitions. Do you have anything interesting, or do you have any teammates who do some very interesting things pre-game?
I really try to keep my days light and steer away from the superstitions, because you think, oh, I didn't get my poached eggs this way this morning, I'm not going to play well. And that does, even though you might think it's a joke, it sits in the back of your mind. For me, I keep things really light. I'll have a hydrolyte, 2 hydrolytes the night before, the morning of, as soon as I wake up. And then I'll always have a coffee. I'll go out for breakfast, whether it's I'm happy to go by myself, my headphones in, or go with my teammates. I'll quickly brush over my field and my plans, but I put a lot of work in prior to the games, days and weeks before, to enable myself to free up through the games and just focus on, again, the execution and the ball that I want to bowl, and know that my plan is in place.
Nicola, one of the things that we've talked about before is the challenges of cricket. And cricket is obviously a very challenging game. It tests you physically, it tests you mentally. Is there a point at your career where you had a big obstacle thrown your way and you found it really hard to overcome? But what did you do to get over the hurdle and continue striving forward? Is there a particular moment that stands out where you were potentially at a low point, or just a big, big obstacle in your career?
I wouldn't say an enormous obstacle, but it's an accumulation of many. Bowling in big moments, I'll either do well or I'll go really big. So I think recovering quite quickly from those days are really pivotal. And that's going back to the point I said before, I got to be kinder to myself and understand that I'm not going to win everything. I'm not going to bowl well. I'm not going to bowl the ball every time where I want it. But I think it's an accumulation of big moments, and getting through it is just understanding that mistakes happen, and you put into place of what went wrong, what can I do better? And you just focus on that part, really.
Everyone has challenges throughout their career, but it also provides fantastic learning opportunities. From a situation that may have not gone your way, Nicola, was there a particular skill or ball that you've tried to learn in order to be able to combat those tricky situations that you may have, as you said, bowling in the power surge or bowling at the death of an innings?
This season I put into, we've identified a few areas that bring my best performance and my worst performance closer together, and what can really benefit the team. So I've focused heavily on Yorker execution this year and backing myself to bowl it, consistently bowling dangerous bounces and hitting a tight line and length, challenging the bat a lot. But we've also brought in a new slow ball. So I think this preseason has been really big for me to hopefully give my team the best opportunity in those key moments this upcoming season.
It's funny that you mentioned the Yorker. It's a ball that I don't think is actually bowled enough in cricket, particularly in limited overs cricket. And we talk about players being able to bowl the wide Yorker and getting it out at the player's reach. So it's really difficult to hit. But I'm sure your preseason will reward you and you'll be able to execute those skills under pressure, which is such a key thing in a competition like the WBBL. Nicola, let's touch a little bit on your personal life. You're a personal trainer outside of your cricketing duties. How did you get into personal training, and what benefits has it actually brought into your own game?
I've been a personal trainer for over 10 years now. What brought me into it was just the love of movement, the love of being active. I think it's something that I've always been passionate about. I've always played sport my whole life. And just empowering people to see the best versions of themselves. I think it's allowed me to have really good connections outside of the game. I've got clients that I've had for many years and I really value my time with them every week. It's a really nice outlet for me. So the benefits have really sort of grounded me through my career.
That's fantastic to hear, Nicola. And I'm sure you've been able to learn some things whilst, working with your clients that you've been able to implement into your own game. Before we finish up, Nicola, just wanted to ask about what are some of your goals for your career? We've touched on playing in the WBBL and continuing to perform for the Brisbane Heat. But do you have any particular aspirations to go and play overseas in some of these new tournaments that are on offer?
I would really love that opportunity. I think if I keep putting my best foot forward and evolving as a cricketer, those opportunities will come. I don't want to put too many set in stone goals for myself, just as the things we spoke about before, like putting external pressure on me that's not needed. If I can focus on what I'm doing now, I think those opportunities will come in the future. I think the last 12 months has really been significant for me in my career. If you asked me, 12 months ago, where I think I'd be at, I've had a lot of close opportunities arise and it's been really beneficial for me. But yes, I would love to play internationally, but a really big goal for me is to win a title, whether that's with Heat or Fire, ideally both. But that's a really, really big goal for me.
Well, that's fantastic to hear, Nicola, and we certainly wish you all the best for the upcoming WBBL season, and I'll be barracking for the Brisbane Heat outside of my beloved Adelaide Strikers, and we wish you all the success you deserve.
No, I really appreciate it. Thanks, Callum.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of In the Cordon. Make sure that you follow all of our social media pages. With every follower that we get, we go and move on to bigger and better things here on the podcast. So take care, everyone. Cheers.